This is an update on training Scout, my service dog, to pull a cart. This is a bike trailer for dogs. It's also convertible to a stroller. It comes with a long shaft that goes where this front wheel is that connects to a bike. But for this purpose, I have it set up as a stroller. And what I'm doing, I had a couple of videos up about him pulling a skateboard, which works fine until you put a lot of weight on it. Unless you have a skateboard where the wheels turn in the front, you put weight on the skateboard, and what happens is it just falls over. It doesn't follow the dog. And that was with using straps to connect the skateboard to the dog. What I'm doing here are 2 bamboo poles, and this is going to be a very easy setup, and I'll test it out later today probably. They're about 46 inches long. They that would depend on how long your dog is. I have drilled holes, 1 hole in each end through the whole tube. And what I'm going to do is take these and attach them like that I'm going to put a loop of rope through that hole with a little clasp on it, a ring on here, and there'll be a little bit of movement like this. The other option is to lash it right to the frame, but I want this removable. I want to be able to set up the bigger cart the same way, and possibly the wheelchair. So 2 bamboo poles with holes drilled at each end. I may have to drill additional holes where they attach to him, depending on how far back it needs to be away from him. This wheel sticks out, and I don't know if that'll be hitting him in the back. So I've got some sizing adjustments to do. These carts, I looked yesterday. This is the smaller of the 2 carts I own. I have a bigger one. The bigger one is basically the same thing, only bigger, and therefore harder for me to pull behind a bike. This can hold, I think, 60 pounds, and I'm starting with this one first because if I go to the grocery store, this is much more convenient than the bigger one, which would take up half an aisle in a grocery store. So I've gone from the skateboard and now to this size trailer. This was Coco's trailer, where I took her everywhere in it. And the bigger trailer is to accommodate Scout's bigger size. But if he can pull this for groceries, both of these models have swivel wheels on the front, and I think that will make a difference from what I went through with the skateboard. So very simple, rope and rings and clasps to attach it to the frame, and then the same basic setup to attach it to the dog. The pole will keep the cart that far back from the dog. There's not going to be awful lot of play, maybe an inch or so, where it attaches to the frame the way I'm going to do it. And as opposed to the straps, which had the skateboard catching up with the dog at times, the poles are going to keep the cart behind him. The advantage to these carts is that when you set them up as a stroller, or even when they're a bike trailer, they have a handle. So if you picture, I'm going to put him in the front with this on him, and I'm going to have a long leash to either his prong collar or maybe his gentle leader nose collar. And I'm going to be walking back here. So if all of a sudden there's traffic or a hill or something, I have the ability to slow the cart down this way, which again wasn't on the skateboard. So when I looked at this model yesterday, it was about $120. I think I got this one on sale for like 75 or 80. You can look at the different online retailers, but also on eBay a lot of times they have them cheaper. I have not checked like local brick and mortar stores. The larger one, which is about 3 feet long, this is about 2 feet long, the red part that you see. The larger one is about 3 feet long, and that one was $230 or $240, and I got it on sale for like $150. So you have to look for these sales. I've had this cart for at least 10 years. I had Coco 11 years, and we used this more or less from the beginning. So it's well worth the money. Well worth the money. Even the big one, if Scout lives, he's a little over a year now. If he lives to be 12 and has a cart for all those 12 years, the larger cart, I take them in. I don't leave them out. I take care of them. They have tube tires, but this one has 12-inch tube tires, which are like a kid's bike, so they're easy to find, the tubes and the tires. We'll see how it works. Now, if you have a dog, this is one reason to also have a Lucet. This is a Lucet, a simple Lucet that you make rope with. And so many things with dogs entail ropes, or it's good to have a narrow backstrap loom to make webbing or straps. But a Lucet is a very simple tool you can keep in your pocket. I'm using this to make the ropes for the cart. You can also buy a clothesline, but if you have yarn around the house, or even heavy-duty twine or string, you can make your own ropes. This is Red Heart Super Saver soft white acrylic yarn, single strand, and acrylic makes a very strong rope. If you're going to make clothesline with this, you should be aware that it does stretch a little bit when the clothes are on it, and somewhat bounces back, but it takes tightening. And although the commercial clothesline is not all that much different with how much it sags. But anyway, for this purpose, I need at least two that are about 6 inches long to fit the pole to the frame. And then on the front, I may need two that are 12 to 15 inches long. And it's very simple to Lucet. I have other videos up. I'll show you if I can one-handed. You have it, you wrap the yarn around the right peg and then the left peg, like that, and then back around, so that, and like I said, there are many videos on with how to get it started. You then pick this stitch up over that loop and this stitch up over that loop and pull it tight, and you have a rope. It's a really simple tool to keep in your back pocket whenever you need to make a rope. So I won't be able to attach the poles and everything until I get the rope done. One thing to mention if you're making your own rope, whether it's, you know, for any reason, but especially when you're hooking to a trailer like this. So here's the Lucet and the rope, and when you start it and when you end it, you end up with a single strand tail. So this is probably 5 inches, and I could end it now, and I would be tying the loop onto the trailer with 2 single strands, just tying a knot. In the case of this application, that's going to leave you with a rope that's really only as strong as those 2 single strands. because you're using it to tie it in a circle through the thing. It's better to go to like 7 or 8 inches long, and when you tie the rope, you actually use the knitted end of the rope to make the knot and not just the single strand. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to make a strong rope and then use a single strand of yarn to tie it, because if you were going to do that, you could just use the yarn and make a loop. But this is a much stronger rope, especially with acrylic yarn. Once it's knit like this, it's not really going to come apart. So that's one little detail that if you're going to use homemade rope, and I have the camera like this, I can show you again how to do this. You can find 3D printed Lucets for about $5, and then they go up from there. This is a rosewood Lucet. So there's the first stitch done. I'm pulling the back of the other stitch, knitting it over, and then pulling it tight. Now, originally these were, well, these are ancient from the Viking times, but also thread spools, empty thread spools with 2 nails on the top. You can make one, I don't have one right here, which is surprising. You can make one very easily with an old wooden thread spool, 2 nails on the top, and you do the same stitch back and forth. And in early America, that was a way to make horse reins with leather. You can also do it with paracord. But for this application, cheap acrylic yarn, 2 stitches, no fancy braiding or anything, and just make the rope pieces long enough to use the rope itself to make a knot, and not just the single strand. Okay, this piece of rope is now 10 inches, and I think that'll give me, even though it's going to be like a very small loop, that'll give me enough to use the ends of the rope as the knotted area. I just want to show you how to end this when you're at this point. I've already trimmed this tail. You take, I have finished where I would be starting a stitch on this side, and instead of doing that, I'm going to take that tail and pull it through this stitch. It's difficult to do it with one hand. Pull it through that stitch, pull the left stitch tight, and then put the tail through the left stitch and pull it tight again. So that's to finish off. You can take it off of there. You go through the right stitch, pull that through, pull it tight, then put the tail through the left stitch and pull it tight, and that's ending it off. So the reason I'm doing this and including the rope information and everything is what I hope to do is have these poles set up. Each end of the pole will have a rope like this through it, and each end of the pole will also have one of these on it, which is just a leash clasp, and you can use the different weight clasp depending on how big of a cart or how much weight you plan on pulling all the time. This is equal to like a keychain or maybe a leash for a cat. A gallon of milk can weigh about 5 pounds. So depending on what you're going to pull your cart for, you can look at the different hardware. At this point, it's all upgradable. So there'll be 2 plain loops like this on the frame of the cart, and then there will be 2 of these, one on each end of the pole, and I'm going to take the pole, clip it onto the loop or through the loop that's on the frame, and clip the pole to the loop. If it turns out I'm pulling 50 pounds all the time, I can just, this isn't going to be a permanent thing, I'm just going to slip the ropes through it. I can upgrade these to heavy duty, and make it stronger. But the advantage to this is that on both of my carts and on my wheelchair, I put rope loops on the frames. Then I can take these poles from one item to the next, and the dog can pull all 3 items. The 2 different size carts and the wheelchair potentially. And so this is going to be really making cart pulls. So that rope is going to go through here with one of those on it, and I'm just going to clip it onto the loop that's on the frame. And then, let's say I get to the store, or let's say I've got the big cart, and for some reason I'd rather the dog get in the cart, and I push the cart, or I hook it up to a bike. These poles you can just store on top of the cart. You unclip them. So it looks to me like it's going to be a good modular system for having rigid poles that will hook up to a dog's harness, one on either side, because the other end, the narrow end of the pole, is going to have one of these on it, on a rope, and I'm going to clip it to his harness. And the rigid pole is going to keep whatever's behind him from going up past him or hitting him in the rear end or anything like that. So that's why I'm showing you how to make the rope. So I need 4 of these, 2 for the frame and 2 for the bottom end of the pole that are, I'm making them 10 inches. And then on the front of the pole that's going to clip to his harness, I have to wait and line him up in it before I see how long the ropes are going to need to be. So you may need to make adjustments, or different weights and things like that, or different ways of using rope. I would use something strong enough and not just a single strand of yarn or string if I were you. And depending on the size of your dog, the size of the cart, you might have to make adjustments. But basically you only need to make 6 pieces of rope, 4 of which are about 10 inches long, and then the 2 front ones that go on the harness, it will depend on the size of the dog and how the pole fits the dog. Yellow groove bamboo is what I'm using, and this grows in the yard. These I cut last year. And you have to be careful when you dry them in the house that they don't crack. The other thing you can do is go to dollar store and buy dollar mops, sponge mops. They're like $1.50 or $2 a piece, and they screw into the sponge head. You just unscrew the sponge head and you've got aluminum poles that you can use. So that's another idea. So now, the next time I'll be on the video here is when I've got the poles attached to the cart, and before I line up the dog for sizing of the rope that's going to hold the pole to the harness. On the ropes that are going on the frame of the trailer, I have already trimmed the tail off of there. Kind of, that's got fuzz on it. I tie a single knot in the end and then trim that off. Those are going on the trailer frame. But to thread the poles, you might want to have a large embroidery needle, such as this. Leave the tail on the rope until you're ready to put it right through the pole, and that allows you to pull the rope through the hole. An alternative is tweezers going through the hole, or forceps or something, but a simple embroidery needle will do it for you, and then you can go from there. Dogs tend to be afraid of sticks, instinctively, so while you're doing this and making this, you might want to let the dog be involved. So by the time I hook him up, he's going to know this stick. He does try to eat everything. What I'm trying to do is hold this above his and measure whether or not this stick is 41 inches long. And I know about where his harness sits. And this, you're gonna run into this. It's part also of training them to retrieve a cane. Any kind of stick is a new item to them, and they're going to need to get used to it. I'm going to try and lie down next to him. I don't think that's going to work either. And this dog is so curious about everything. And it helps to include the dog in what you're doing and make it a joint venture, so that when you do hook him up, he knows you're going to have fun doing it. While I'm finishing up the ropes, I want to mention safety a little bit. I've switched to orange for the front ropes on the poles, simply for my own visibility. I'll know orange is in the front, white is in the back. The two back end of the poles that are going to connect to the frame are all done, and you can see I just slipped that on there. I have 3 knots in the rope, and there will be a little bit of play in these, but not an awful lot. Now, safety comes up for a couple of reasons. So when I get the front of the poles done, they'll be orange, and I'm going with there's about 14 inches from his vest to his tail. I'm going to make the ropes, I'm not sure if that's accurate, so I'm going to make the front ropes about 18 inches long, which folded in half will give me 9 inches to adjust with on the front. And again, these ropes will get one of these slid on them, and this will just connect right to his harness. It depends. He has 2 harnesses right now, and so it'll depend. By just tying 3 knots in the rope, you can adjust it to different harnesses. But the other thing that comes up, a lot of those trailers come with a visibility flag that sticks in the trailer and is about 3 feet above the trailer. Now, one of the big advantages of these trailers is that they're either a bike trailer or a stroller. And in this case, it's the stroller I'm adapting to a dog cart. But if I want to use that as a bike trailer, I simply take that front wheel off, put the bike trailer shaft on. It takes like 2 minutes to switch the two, and then you can... So the way I'm doing this all is to keep the trailer as variable as it is now, as either a bike trailer or a stroller, but add a dog cart idea. But safety. The flags often look hokey. For about 10 years or so, I rode my bike all through town, pulling my son in a hard fiberglass trailer. And then he was on his bike as he got older, and I used that trailer for groceries and stuff. Cars won't pay attention. Drivers don't see you. So you need that flag on, even if it looks a little hokey. If you're going to do things at dusk or at dawn, you need, these are pant clips for riding a bike. And these can go right on the poles. That can go right on the pole. You can buy reflective tape. Or in this case, the other thing, this is glow-in-the-dark Gimp. And I'm using Gimp for other things anyway. You can make keychains with these little clasps. And I have one made, but it's not right here. Put a keychain on a clasp and hang these from the dog's collar. From the perimeter of the trailer. You want to be visible, and this does work. It's very easy to make a keychain. I can add a link to some directions for a simple box stitch or a spiral stitch. And this makes, again, it very versatile. You just hang this wherever you want light reflected if you're going to be doing anything. Now, a lot of that addresses traffic and being out with cars or bikes or motorcycles. This cart actually can just be used in your yard. Some of my trees are getting bigger. They're heavier to move from place to place. I grow them in containers. The cart I'm starting with holds 60 pounds. So he can help me move the trees around. And the reason I would go to all this trouble for something as simple as that is that a service dog needs to be given a job. One thing that helped my other dog as she aged were her commands, and she remembered she had a job. And up till the last day, what she ended up depending on were the commands. Sit, stay, come, no, up, down. Simple words they learn. And it's reassuring to them that they know what they're doing. And in his case, this guy's a little over a year old. He's just learning these. And yeah, like with the sticks, as soon as I said leave it, he stopped fiddling with it. So then he knows the rules. So now as I take this out into a cart, I can teach him more rules, even if we're in the yard. And what a lot of people have dogs that do either retrieval training or endurance training or show training. What a dog needs is to be learning new things. And that applies to service dogs, even if they know certain tasks. So if you're going to adapt a stroller trailer to a dog cart, don't forget the safety. I knew I'd forget. One thing I want to add, the reason you don't want to forget the safety. Here's the danger of this, even if you're in your yard, but kind of not really. If somebody is going to clip the cart, these poles, or any poles like that, are going to go into your dog. And that's why this isn't just, oh, I'm pulling a wagon around the neighborhood. You want to think about how you're doing this. You want to do it with safety first and utility second, and the safety of the dog. So if I'm walking down the street and somebody sees the dog but not the cart, and they clip the cart with a car, these poles, well, the bamboo may snap in half, aluminum may not, and the pole is going to go into the dog and we're going to be at the vet. So safety first. And here we are, we're ready for the dog. You can see that I tied the short white connectors to the upper, like the middle of the frame. And I'll tell you why I'm going to do that. Not only that's like, the dog is 23 inches tall. So that gives me a midway between the lower and the higher. But also, these strollers, this one in particular, that wheel does swivel 360 degrees, and I'm going to oil it before I use this, like, for any extent. But there are times when it just decides to go left and you want to go right. I may take, excuse me, something just hit my head. I may take that whole wheel off and simply have the dog pull the cart. And if I do that, when I take that wheel off, the front of the cart will obviously be on the ground. But it's doable. And it would mean the dog is actually pulling the cart without the wheel interfering. Once I get him harnessed up and test this out, we'll see whether that wheel is better on there or off of there. And it will also depend on where you're going. If I'm around the yard, it's probably better to have the wheel off. If I'm going down the street to the library, it's probably better to have it on. So far, all of this has taken me maybe an hour and a half, drilling the poles, making the ropes, setting the trailer up, and now it's time to attach the dog and we see if it works. Okay, we're hooking him up, and this is why it takes training. Don't expect them to just jump into the harness and want to do what you're telling them to do. I have one pole connected. He's turned around in it twice with the poles connected. So we're working on backing him into it and hooking him up, and then I'll just move forward. I'm waiting for a school bus to leave because we really don't need that distraction right now with the kids and everything. So be prepared that you're going to have to actually train them to understand what you're doing with this. So this service dog harness might not be the better one to use with this. His other harness, the attachment loops are further down on his body. You can see how the one pole is up, stay. And here we're running into things, and it might be better to just move forward, make sure he doesn't start jumping around. But in the meantime, while I'm trying to do this, my neighbor came home with her little puppy that he gets excited about. The school bus was there, and it's like 80 degrees out. I think this is going to work, and it's going to be a matter of going up and down the street several times until he realizes what's behind him and what we're doing. It is doable, and now it's the training. He's doing well. I'm going to try and video this as we go. Come on, go. No, go. And what I have to do is just control him. It's now training, like I said. Turn. Now my hand, don't do that. He's hot, and there's something on the ground, and I don't want it to be like antifreeze. Worst case scenario, I'm going to train him. So he got a little discombobulated with the poles moving around, and it's this particular service dog vest. The vest moves side to side, which has the poles moving side to side. And he's a little bit hot. So I'm not going to push him with this right now. Hounds are actually perfect for this because they like to walk ahead. And this leash I have on him is a 6-foot leash. And just sit. See how the poles would go into them? So it's going to take a little bit more practice, a little bit more training, and a cooler day. He actually did very well with this for the first day, and having those poles at his side like that. The straps were different. They felt like a leash. So he got a nice cold bottle of spring water and a couple of pieces of popsicle. And now he's gonna go after the milk bones. He did very well, and I believe if I change to the other vest, which doesn't move side to side like that, I think he'd have much less of a problem. So I'm happy with the way it came out. I'm now going to work with it at least 2 or 3 times a week to just get him used to it. Then we'll move to the bigger cart and possibly a wheelchair. But you saw he got a little spooked with the bamboo poles, and you can't have that happen with really the bigger cart or the wheelchair especially. But it is possible to adapt a stroller bike trailer to a dog cart.